Well, hey guys, good to have you back. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower. Welcome back to the Christian Whistleblower channel. Our job here is simple. We try to help you be your own guru, guide your own spirit, and master your own ascension. In short, we're in the business of helping you unindoctrinate yourself. I'm coming to you live from an undisclosed location somewhere deep in the American heartland. Coming from the heartland to your heart is our desires. And today I'm very, very excited because we have a special guest today brought to us by our good friends at Gaia. And if you want to get 2 weeks free at Gaia, just go to gaia.com/Jeff. They'll give you 2 weeks free, and you'll be able to see some of the great programming that does include Randy. Randy Cramer comes forward to tell of his experiences with the 20 and Back program as a genetically and technologically augmented soldier. Now, during his 20-year tour of duty, he fought indigenous insectoids on Mars, patrolled the solar system defending Earth from potential invaders, and was sent on missions to other worlds. Through all of his harrowing encounters, perhaps his greatest challenge was being returned to civilian life and facing a flood of memories of a life in the 20 and Back. And as a part of his testimony, Randy has submitted a polygraph examination and answers some challenging questions. And Randy, we hope that this won't be a real challenging event for you. Welcome to the Christian Whistleblower Show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. And you know, people always say that they want to be nice to me, but I really don't mind hardball questions. So, you know, bring it on.
Bring it on. Bring it on. Well, let's just start right at the beginning. A lot of people are less than convinced about some of the people that talk about the secret space program and some of the things that you've gone through. And just to those people, I'd like to say that to my understanding, you, Randy Cramer, are one of only 2 individuals that have been willing to submit to polygraph examination on your experiences. Is that true?
To my understanding, it's a very limited number. I'm only aware of 2 or 3. Yes.
Absolutely. So, folks, if you have questions, if you have doubts, try to be fair, try to be rational, try to be optimistic. And to me, a fellow that's willing to submit to polygraph examination doesn't sound like a guy that has a lot to hide. But that's just me, Randy. That's just me. And you've actually participated in 3 polygraph tests. Is that correct?
There was a number of tests on the day that we did the test. Yeah. So there was, it was multiple tests in one day that accounted for the test. Yes.
What is it like when you go through a polygraph? I don't think most of us have ever done one.
Well, I mean, I'm sitting in a chair, not unlike the chair I'm sitting in now. There are sensor pads for your hands, for your feet. There's straps that you wear across the chest for reading heart rate and breathing. There's a blood pressure monitor. And then there's some finger slippy things that are measuring sweat glands and some other things, electro response or something in the skin. And so you're sitting perfectly still in that position, because if you're sitting on a sensor, your hands are on a sensor, your feet are on a sensor. So anyone who is trying to fudge with the test by, you know, pushing a tack in their foot or clenching or doing anything like that is going to completely show up on the monitor as someone shifting uncomfortably. So the sensors are designed to detect any uncomfortable movement whatsoever. And all of the other sensors are designed to detect autonomic responses to telling lies, which your brain and your body just do, whether you want it to or not, whether you think you're in control of it, you're not. And there's a bunch of autonomic responses that occur. Now, it's not a reaction to feeling guilty. It's the reaction to telling a lie. So you could tell. So in fact, they ask you like a test question, which is something you're supposed to lie to deliberately. So the question was, have you ever regretted saying something in anger? Well, everyone has regretted saying something in anger at least once in their life. So you lie when they ask you that, and you say no, so that they can look at a baseline of what your system is doing when you tell a basic lie against the other questions that they're asking you. So they're looking at what you do when you tell a lie, when you tell the truth, and then comparing on the test questions whether it looks like you're lying, you're telling the truth. So yeah, I've been trying to get someone to give me a polygraph for years and years and years, and we honestly, until recently, couldn't get anyone to give me one. So I'm very excited that we finally got this done. I've been itching to do this for years.
Excellent. And our friends at Gaia report that there's only one other secret space program or SSP whistleblower that's been willing to go on the record with a polygraph test, and his name is Jason Rice. And Jason Rice's interviews are already available on Gaia in earlier seasons of Cosmic Disclosure. And Randy, I understand you're pretty excited because you've got some episodes coming up on Cosmic Disclosure yourself, correct?
Yeah, we did 8 episodes. They had Emery Smith interview me, which I'll be honest with you, I don't think there could have been a better person to ask me questions, because Emery has his own experiences on a personal level, that he really knew what questions to ask. And when we got on certain topics, he really knew where to prompt and go places. And so the ability for the way the questions were generated were really perfect. I think it was a great set of interviews, maybe some of the best interviews that I've ever sat for. And I'm super excited that they're coming out. I'm really looking forward to it.
Excellent. And Randy, one of the things I'm excited about, I like to joke that I'd say I wasn't in the military, but I was in the Air Force for 6.5 years. And as people, exactly, anyone that's been involved with the other services knows exactly what I mean. But we get to work with some great folks like the StemLight company. StemLight does stem cells from umbilical cords that help speed healing time and repair osteoarthritic joints. They reduce the need for pain medications, increase collagen production, and even generate new heart and blood vessel tissue, working with our veterans. If you want to get involved in StemLight, go to the website stemlightcenter.com, use the code word HEAL for a discount. And if you're a provider of stem cells, go to southernstem.com and use the same code HEAL. And they're working with our veterans. And Randy, I want to thank you for your service to our country, and very, very different service within the USMC SS. And what does that SS stand for?
Stands for Special Section.
And this is where you were part of what we call the 20 and Back program. Can you explain that program to the viewers that haven't heard of it?
Sure. Covert military space program activities typically use genetically augmented personnel, because you need genetically augmented personnel to thrive in space environments and in other planetary environments. Studies have shown that you just pluck people, out of the civilian population and train them and send them into space and off world, and they don't do very well. So genetically engineering and augmenting soldiers for decades has been the way to get the personnel that you need. And it's very costly, building, making, training those personnel. So you don't get your money back in 4 years. The only way you get your money back is in a 20 or plus year program. So then we're sent off for 20 plus years, 20 or sometimes more, and then return after that. Oddly enough, small amounts of time travel are involved. And so you're returned, age regressed 15 minutes after you leave, so that no one knows that you ever went anywhere for security purposes. Your memories are completely wiped. And then you think you're just starting your life where you left off, until all the memories start flooding back, and it gets, a little more confusing at that point. But basically, it's just the way in which they have determined to deploy these personnel into the covert space program who are genetically capable of doing the service and have their memories wiped and their age reversed, so that their security breach of them being able to tell anything or show any evidence that they were anywhere is next to zero, so that you're essentially keeping the secrecy on that program as tight as possible through the personnel that you have to serve.
Interesting. Randy, do you have any, now as you're getting years away from this experience, do you have any memory of the selection process and the training process before you were sent out on your mission?
Oh, I have a photographic memory, and I would like to think that I have full recovery, full memory recall, which is not to say that I have remembered every last second, but I have a full arc of memory from point A to the end point, where I understand what fills up all of those gaps. And I have remembered certainly many specific instances that have occurred throughout that, so that it's as much of a clear arc and path of memory as any other path of memory in my life. Like if I'm just trying to remember high school or grade school or college or my third girlfriend. It's a similar trail of memory into a series of emotional, physiological, sensory recordings that follow a linear path. So it's as much a memory as any other kind of memory that I have at this point.
Interesting. I was just remembering my third girlfriend. That was a nice memory. She's a nice girl. So you remember the selection process, you remember the training process, and do you when you say you've got full memory recall, do you now remember being on Mars and fighting insectoids and many of the other missions that you participated in?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I've written a book about it, and the book is basically done, just not published yet. We're in the final stages of getting all the publishing crap taken care of, and copyrights, blah, 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 and all that stuff. So yeah, I have remembered all that. There will be a book coming out, and people who want to read some more detail about that, or what detail I felt that I could spend some time writing about. It's all very traumatic and not a lot of fun to sit down and recall, but certainly it was necessary to go through the process. Anyone who's experienced a severe trauma of any kind, whether combat oriented or not, part of the healing and recovery process is remembering things and remembering them as traumatic, horrible events, and remembering that they were painful or terrifying or filled with anger or rage or blood and guts flying everywhere. I mean, you don't get over it unless you deal with it. So it's been an incredibly uncomfortable, not fun process, but just like the entire decade's worth of healing that I've been doing since I came back, it's all for the best, because I'm a better, more stable, emotionally stable, secure, mentally stable, secure person by going through the healing process than I am by not going through the healing process. So as difficult as it is, I'm grateful to continue through the process and be a more whole person because of it. Because what else are you going to do? If you feel like you're not a whole person, you're not really living, and you're doing more than sort of existing and surviving as a not whole person. So I find being more whole is better.
Absolutely. I would agree with you. Now, Randy, I was in the Air Force, again, like I said, for almost 7 years. And even when I was in, and I wasn't an aware person then, it was before, I came into this genre. And I was very much, I don't know if I was curious, concerned, but we got so many shots, and there were so many times we had to go to the base, I forget what we called the medical place now, but to the base doctors. And I'm just wondering, all of these shots, all of these samplings, are they kind of looking for people to recruit or to bring into the secret space program? Is that part of what that's all about, would you think?
Constantly. There are personnel shortfalls within the programs that, we sort of been struggling with for the last couple of decades. As the program has grown and grown and grown, the need for more personnel has become a bottleneck, and we're really having a difficult time getting the personnel into the positions, which is, I think, one of the main reasons why we actually need and want disclosure right now, and why the military wants disclosure right now, because we need more boots to fill jobs that we can't just get to fill jobs right now. And there has to be some open recruitment and some open and ability for people to volunteer into these programs. And so, yeah, the military is always blood testing and looking at people. And I talked to a couple of soldiers who have been in regular military programs who talk about being taken into medical facilities for testing, and staring at a screen for some number of minutes that had pictures flashing on it, and then taking a written test afterwards. That's all that kind of covert program kind of testing stuff. So yeah, they're doing it all the time.
And it's interesting that we talk about this because Jenny Constantine, who's a great researcher in her own right, she just shared with me recently that, she went down to the recruiting office for the military and tried to say, hey, I want to sign up for Space Force. And she was told that they're only recruiting internally for Space Force at this time. So you have to be in service to be joining the Space Force. So that's very, very interesting.
Correct.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Just crazy, crazy stuff. And, would it be, do you think it'd be wrong for me to extrapolate that they took all of my stuff and all of my sampling, and it was determined that I probably wasn't fit for the program? Is that why I wasn't approached?
Um, I would suggest that you probably on one or more criteria that were considered critical, you were below the bar. That
Right.
doesn't mean you are a miserable, 4F. It just means that on one or more criteria, you didn't meet the bar, and they're really picky. And in some ways, they might need to learn to be less picky about certain jobs if they want to get the boots to fill the jobs. But in some cases, maybe we just need better ability to screen and test people so that we can get better people. But I don't think we want to brain drain the entire rest of society and civilization into covert military space program activities. So I think at some point there's got to be some balance in being able to find regular jobs for regular people, because we've got a lot of jobs that need to be filled, and we don't want to be using slave labor anymore, and we don't want to be using clone labor anymore, because those are really problematic for all kinds of reasons. And we need to put people in jobs, and we need boots to fill those jobs so that the program can continue to expand.
Absolutely. And to be frank with you, I would not have wanted to go anyway. So they did the job right, because it's not something that I would have wanted to be a part of. I'm perfectly content to leave that to the more adventurous types like yourself, and I'll stay right here on terra firma if that's okay with you.
Yeah, and I was definitely engineered for it from the time that I was a child. I mean, the idea of, I wanted to be an astronaut from the time that I was a kid, or be a soldier, or both. And the idea of traveling far and wide and going to exotic places, and was, what my childhood was made of. So I was definitely engineered and built for it, because I'm thrilled. It's my happy place. I'll be honest. In some ways, like the ability to be places where other people will never go. Yeah, it's exciting. It's fun. Aside from when body parts are blowing up and exploding, it's fun.
Not bad. Now, do you literally mean that you think there's a possibility that you were literally engineered from birth to be a part of this program?
Oh yeah, I know for a fact that I was. Yeah, no, I was definitely genetically engineered from the ground up. DNA strain was tinkered with so that certain codons were replaced with extraterrestrial DNA. So they hybridized me in a few different places to be more adaptable, probably to simplify what those aims were probably going for, was greater adaptability, some intelligence, agility, strength, endurance, but most of it's probably psychological, metaphysical adaptability, because you certainly start to experience things that challenge your brains and your mind's ability to cope. And at some level, if you don't have a consciousness that can accept big things and big ideas, people start to fall apart, is when their brains can't grasp the really big concepts and the really big
Can
ideas.
imagine. Now, if we allow ourselves to wax real conspiratorial, we could look at the services constantly testing and extracting blood from service members, and we could look at compartmentalization of military programs and say that maybe what they're looking for when they're doing all the testing on regular service personnel are people that already contain the genetic markers of predisposition or preparation, if you will, and those are the people they're looking to pull out.
Definitely. They're definitely looking at genetics for sure. And one of the first criteria of whether you would be considered for any particular service job is going to be genetic markers that would make you more adaptable or more likely to survive those kinds of stressful environments of space and other worlds.
Interesting. And just to repeat, you're going to be on 8 episodes of the Gaia program, Cosmic Disclosure, coming up. So folks, there's much more of this information for you coming up. Do you know, in your experience, Randy, if the selection process and the ability process to be in SSP type programs, does it have anything to do with having RH negative blood?
That is one factor among many factors, and it's not what I would call an exclusionary factor, nor is it a automatic passing factor. So someone with RH negative blood isn't going to be accepted or rejected automatically because of that. It will likely sideline them into a certain direction of what they might want to have that person do, because that may be an indicator for that, but it's not going to be an indicator of pass or fail. It's going to be an indicator of something more specific. again, with a whole bunch of other genetic factors that I'm not very qualified to get too specific about because it's not my area of study.
I gotcha. I understand. Now I'm thinking about, something that's maybe a little silly. If it is silly, just let me know. There was a recent Tom Cruise movie. I think it was called Edge of Tomorrow or something about tomorrow,
Yeah.
where he was in a, like a secret space program type of a thing. And he would go out and get killed and would be regenerated to go out and fight again. Was that a part of your lifestyle, or were you killed and just dead?
It's interestingly enough, what would often happen is we would get injured very, very badly. Anywhere from not so bad, like lose a finger or a hand, or anything that could be really bad, which is, one or more limbs being lost, or, parts of your lower torso, upper torso getting blown apart. It's actually feasible with the technology that they have to take a person whose body is very damaged, put them into a medical vehicle which has a stasis bed, which is essentially creates a stasis field, so you actually die much slower, so that they can keep you alive long enough to get you back to a medical facility where they can stabilize your brain and your organs, and then rebuild all of your organs, all of your fingers, arms, legs. So we would get shot up, blown up, taken into medical, rebuilt, and then some hours or days later, get up and be ready to go do it again. So in a way, it was kind of like that, because yeah, you didn't just go get hurt and, oh, I'm hurt, I'm out. No, we're gonna fix you and you're going back. And then, getting your arms and legs. There were times when, I couldn't get off the ground because I didn't have enough limbs or limb strength, where, I can't see what's going on because I got an eye out of a socket. I'm trying to hold my guts into my belly, and, before I pass out, and then wake up with everything put back together again and go, oh, okay, ready to go. Let's do it again. So psychologically, it's similar.
Yes, it sounds amazing. Randy, would you be shocked if you learned that, oh, guess what? They were able to revive us when we were dead within a certain number of minutes or hours and bring us back to service?
I know that we use some different terminology there, because, life and death becomes this really interesting gray area.
Right.
So someone can be, damaged what appears to be beyond repair, but is not. And you don't know whether they're alive or dead yet, depending on how much electrical activity is left in the brain. Now, I have heard some people talk about some procedures that are not dependent on whether there's electrical activity in the brain, but I can't really comment on that because that wasn't the process that we were using. But as long as some enough of your brain and your biology was still kicking, then you're retrievable. And if you're not, then you're unretrievable. So the only way you're really for real dead is when you're unretrievable. But someone can appear to be, or what under normal circumstances would be, oh, they're going to bleed out, die out within seconds if they're not already dead. But in some cases, many cases actually, we could take a person wounded that badly and still retrieve them and bring them back.
Since we're down the crazy train, have you ever heard of, or could you imagine if one person, their body was unretrievable, is it possible to retrieve their essence and transfer it into a body that is not unretrievable?
In theory, yes. Since that's, again, not my area of study, I can't tell you under what specific circumstances that can be done or can't be done. But yes, the science and the technology exist to do that.
Excellent. And I would just say, and I'm addressing somebody in the chat room, David McLean says, really, where's the evidence? David, I don't know if you tuned in late, but Randy is one of only two people that claim to have been veterans of the secret space program that have taken multiple polygraph tests. So there's your answer to that. Randy, I'm just sitting here thinking, it must be horrific to think of the trauma, the mental, just the mental stress that goes on by having your limbs blown off and then having them regrown, having these horrific injuries and having it regrown. But the thing that even gets to me more and makes me wonder is, I happen to believe we're all spiritual beings. And
Definitely.
I can understand where you could fix the body. You can wipe the memories from a human electrical system brain, but at some level, there's got to be this residual spiritual understanding, this residual spiritual trauma, this residual spiritual pain of all this stuff that has happened to you. And I would think that even with all of our technology, they're not able to wipe that out. Did you ever run into this when you got back, just hit by the enormity of what happened? And how the hell did you deal with it?
Oh, yeah. So what you're referring to there is, I mean, there's definitely in that process damage that is being done to the energy body, the etheric body, the non-physical body is damaged, is definitely being done. And my healing process was, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. So, when I was dealing with it on all of those levels and all of the layers of the body at that level. So, I was experiencing, okay, this is dealing with this part of my physical body. This is dealing with this part of my psychology. This is dealing with this, my emotional trauma. And then, oh, why is that not seeming to hold together? Oh, because my energy body's got holes in it everywhere. So there was definitely a time when, I don't know how else to put it, stitching it back together. I mean, what was something that I spent a tremendous amount of meditative time and doing energy work on myself and going into theta states and restructuring and rebuilding my energy body, again and again and again and again and again until it started to actually repair. And it was a long, slow, tedious process. I mean, I think it was probably about 2 years of like regular sessions twice a day, once in the morning and once in the evening, that I had to do that dedication every day, twice a day, just so that I could get everything to the point that I could start the process of, putting it back together. And that was really just the basics of stitching the energy body back together, stabilizing the emotional body, stabilizing the psyche and the PTSD symptoms, which is, anxiety, agoraphobia, insomnia, light sensitivity, sound sensitivity, nausea. I mean, there's just a whole list of symptoms that go with that. And then once I got to this just baseline place, after doing all of that basic repair, then I could actually start fixing things. So yeah, it was a major problem. And if I hadn't been sensitive to that level of awareness and focused on it, I don't think I would have actually been able to heal or, get myself recovered, because it was absolutely essential. And so, yeah, you do enough damage to the physical body and you definitely will start to do serious damage and harm to the energy body. And we're talking about people going into combat situations hundreds of times, thousands of times, having their bodies damaged, in some cases, what would normally be irreparably destroyed, and then repaired and brought back and, had to do it over again. So it is kind of like, living a life where you get to die 1,000 deaths or more, and you just keep to get doing it and doing it and doing it. That leaves a mark. That leaves a deep mark.
I'll bet it does. Did the military help you in that recovery process?
Only in the sense that I was engineered to self-repair. So I was engineered to, walk away from service and then immediately start to do the self-analysis of what wasn't working right and start to fix it, which I did. And I never really understood what my drive and my motivation was for many, many years, until someone superior, my brigadier general, said to me, he said, well, you were designed to self-repair. Like, oh, well, thanks for that. So
interesting. Now, that brings us to another interesting point. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. We have just a little bit of a lag.
It's okay. No, I was just saying, if I hadn't been taught to self-repair, I don't know that I would have.
Interesting. And when you say taught to self-repair, I'm a alchemist, I'm a wizard of sorts. And I'm thinking that, yes, you can be taught to learn to self-repair, but there has to be some type of a alchemical, maybe magical portion of that too, wouldn't you think?
That makes perfectly good sense to me. I don't know that I can comment positively or negatively or factually about it, but I think that's a reasonable assumption. Yeah, that's a reasonable assumption.
Excellent. Randy, let's take a little bit of a turn. And this next segment is going to be brought to us by Fluffy. These are the folks, Focus Life Force Energy. They provide a more nurturing environment, expand your consciousness, help with sleep and meditation, boost healing, increase your function, concentration, and creativity. And the folks at Verve with the greatest, I think, CBD oil, takes care of anxiety, sleep, pain, epilepsy. So, Randy, you went through all of this rigorous training. Now, when I was in the Air Force, they said, okay, you're out of basic training, you're out of your schooling. Here's 3 places you can go. Did you get to pick, or do they just tell you you're going to Mars?
Oh, there was no picking. I didn't get to choose. I didn't get to choose. I didn't get to pick. Yeah, I got told where I was going to go, and I went there every time. So, yeah.
Okay, where was the first place you went? Do you remember?
I was to Mars. Yeah, to the to Forward Station Zebra in the MDF.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? What's it like to get on the? Did you transport it like through Star Trek type transporter rooms, or was it on a vehicle that took you to Mars?
They put us on a transport vehicle that I would say had a few thousand people on it. It was
Wow.
It was a few hundred meters wide. I mean, like 400 meters wide, maybe more. It was a big hangar. It was really hard to judge distances and
Right.
sizes, and looked like it could have been almost 5 stories high. I mean, it was huge. It was really big. It was multiple levels. It was very wide, and there was a lot of people in queue that they were shuffling onto it and got off of it. My guess is, there were several thousand people on the vehicle at the time, but I couldn't say exactly how many.
So just like I got on a big jet to go over to Germany, you got on a big transport vehicle to go out to Mars.
I got the same thing everybody else gets. I got a packet that had all my contract and all my information in it, my duty station papers in it, and I got put on a transport, which here on Earth you'd get put on a bus or on a plane, but because it was, for the space program, I got put onto a larger transport, and then just carted off to Mars. And when we got there, we had to go through a queue line where everyone, would take a scan of your packet and scan the dog tag behind your ear to make sure it matched the packet. And then that would tell them where they would tell you where to go. And then they would tell you which queue to go from there. And we went on a smaller shuttlecraft, about the size of a school bus. And that flew over the ground to Forward Station Zebra, a couple hours north of Ares Primus, which was the headquarters of the MDF, which is the Mars Defense Force, and the MCC, which is the Mars Colony Corporation.
Interesting. Crazy question, but were there windows in these transport vehicles as you were leaving Earth and going to Mars?
Yes and no. So there are no windows to speak of. The entire ceiling is like a screen, like a television screen. And when it turns on, it's as if you're looking right out of the ceiling, as if there were no ceiling. So it projects an image on the ceiling that's exactly what would be out in front of you if there was no ceiling. So it's an optical illusion as far as, there's still a ceiling, but you're seeing the image across that ceiling that makes it looks like there's, like you're in a giant convertible.
Interesting. So unfortunately, you can't definitively state that you looked out a window and disappoint our flat Earth believers and saw that the Earth was indeed round.
Oh, well, when we took the TR-3B from the southwest to the moon, there was a window. I did see out the window, and I've been in orbit, and the Earth's not flat. That's ridiculous.
Okay, well now you're on record for that. So that's what a lot of our listeners wanted to know about. And what do you say to people that say that you're just brainwashed?
Okay, well, here's what I would tell somebody who wants to say that. Any person who has spent thousands of hours of self-analysis, meditative self-discovery, understanding the way their own mind and their own memories work, anyone who's spent more thousands of hours than I have at that wants to criticize whether they think I might be brainwashed or not, I'll listen to them. But anyone else who has not put that much amount of time or energy into understanding their own mind and their own memories, then that person simply doesn't understand how much time and energy I put into this to get to the truth. And so let me put it this way. There was certainly a time early on where I didn't know whether the memories that I was experiencing were true, false, right, wrong. I didn't know what was going
I
on.
would think that would have to kind of occur to you.
Yeah, I was terribly confused. So I have to say, at some point, I knew there was something I didn't know. I knew there was memories I couldn't remember. I knew there was something that I didn't understand, and I didn't want to judge it. I didn't want to come to conclusions about it without, knowing the best memories or best information I could first. So my first approaches towards even digging into my own memories was incredibly cautious, meaning I would sit, and my mantra as I would go into these theta states, remember, would be, I want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, no matter what. I want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, no matter what. So I wanted to make sure that my psyche and my brain got the message, hey, I want the truth here. So, let's get to that. And there certainly was a period of time of pulling up some screen memories and things that weren't, were obviously put there to mislead me. And it was really just through this thousands of hours of this process that I gleaned through all of that and was able to take these memories and look at them one at a time. And in many cases, I would have an experience of remembering something, pull it up, look at it, remember it, and then go, nope, and then outright reject it and say, no, I'm not going to believe that happened until I remember it again the exact same way. And sometimes I would stop from that process, and because of the emotional trauma, would sometimes have to take days or weeks between sessions and then come back to it and do it again. And if it wasn't exactly the same, if the memory deviated at all, then I would not accept that as a thing that actually happened. So the memories that I have experienced and that I remember, again, with photographic recollective clarity, are the same as any other memory. If I compare a memory, a traumatic memory of when I was 7 years old, and we had a creek in our backyard, and we had a little dock, and it fell down. It had one of the pylons broke. It was wintertime. I slipped on it and stuck a nail through my finger. Like, I can remember that day with, perfect clarity. And I can remember other incidences that I can remember in the military with the same kind of perfect clarity. The quality of those memories, as far as visual, sensory recollection, whether the images itself seem solid and real, as opposed to what, other memories that are not real or not of solid things don't have that same qualities. So it is only through thousands and thousands of hours of delving into my own mind and my own experiences and my own memories that I have come to a conclusion that I have tested again and again and again. So I never, took a memory the first time and went, oh, that's exactly what happened. I would look at a memory and go, I'm not so sure. I would scrutinize my own memories with a tenaciousness that probably would have not taken as long to go through this process if I had been willing to do it more quickly and just accept things as they came along. But I didn't want to be wrong. I didn't want to be wrong for the exact reason that I didn't want to think that maybe, I was remembering something that wasn't an actual memory of mine. I wanted to make sure that I was sure, that I was certain. And that was only after decades of going through this process and going through the recollective memory process and spending thousands and thousands of hours in deep meditative theta states to get to those answers.
Excellent. And I can understand there was a lot of work. Randy, let's talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit, if we can, about actual combat on Mars. Was there a atmosphere on Mars, or are you fighting in a zero atmosphere type of environment?
Oh, no, there's definitely an oxygen breathable atmosphere. It's very thin. Certainly the farther north you get, which is where we were, it gets thinner and thinner. I would say that it was like a high mountain environment. So you could pop up the visor on your helmet. You could breathe the air outside, but it was thin. You couldn't necessarily start running and breathe that air because it's not enough oxygen concentrated into it. So to do anything physical, you needed the oxygen in the suit. And it was pretty cold sometimes, so you couldn't necessarily be out without the environment suit on, but it was definitely a breathable atmosphere, just thin. So you couldn't function without extra oxygen or without extra air, but totally breathable.
And what were the suits like? I think we're thinking of the Apollo suits, and how in the world would you have the dexterity to fight in one of those things? What were the suits like that you folks fought in?
So it's a exosuit, which you have a basic um, kind of wicking thermal wear that's sort of your underlayer, your undergarment that you wear that goes to wrist to ankle to neck, and it has wiring and hoses in it for cooling the body and wicking away water, as well as electrical sensors so that it can detect when damage is happening to different parts of the body. There's the exosuit that goes over that, is more sealed. It's not completely and totally airtight, again, because you're not in a completely vacuum environment. So it's mostly airtight, but you can get sand in your suit. You can, after being outdoors and jumping around on the ground, take everything off and find little bits of red and orange sand inside where it gets into the joints and things. But it's an exosuit that has like automatic tourniquets at the upper joint. So if your arm gets blown off, there's an automatic tourniquet that will cinch down your arm so you don't bleed to death. It's a hydraulically powered exosuit, which anyone who wants to look up, there are some civilian exosuits, and Raytheon has also put out some video of an exosuit that they're working on, which we know that if a defense contractor shows the public a video of what they're working on, what they've got is way more advanced than the video that they're showing. But it's essentially, you've got hydraulics and some exo parts so that you can lift heavier objects. And in this case, in a nearly 0.4 G environment with hydraulic legs, you can jump really high and really far. So yeah, in the lower gravity environment, that powered exosuit makes you crazy strong and able to lift, large boulders because they're not the same weight and you've got more strength. And so that means you can pick, you look like super freaking man picking up this giant boulder and throwing it, but it's just lower gravity and hydraulics, in the suit that make you look like you're stronger than you actually are.
Now, one of our listeners asked Randy, what happens if you have to go to the latrine?
Oh, look, astronauts have to do this too, all right? You got an adult diaper on, and whatever happens when you're in the field, and you change when you get back.
Wow. I would hope there'd be some high-tech solution, but I guess not.
Look, it's not something people talk about, but astronauts and jet pilots have to do the same thing, okay? So it's the unglamorous part of the job that you got to wear, a giant diaper if you have to poop or pee yourself.
Oh, wow. That's terrible. That's terrible.
It's not glamorous. It's not glamorous at all, but it's how you have to deal with it.
I can imagine. What is the weaponry like? Are you carrying like a rifle, or what is it like?
Our primary weapon was a magnetically propelled rifle, railgun, or a Gauss rifle. So for people who don't know what that is, the barrel of the weapon is a series of electromagnets that turn on and off. So the electromagnetic field around the projectile pulls the projectile down the barrel of the gun and launches it out the end without the explosion of a chemical.
So it is a projectile. It's not a beam.
No. Now there are plasma rifles. I have used a plasma rifle. We didn't use them in the MDF. In the MDF, we used a railgun. That was the primary weapon.
So on Mars, you used a railgun.
Right. So you use a metal projectile that's magnetized so that it draws into the chamber in a certain direction, because it's not like a shell casing that you have to put in a magazine. You actually have this box that looks more like a paintball box where you just got, like, you throw the paintballs into it. You've got like these projectiles that go into the box and you put it under there. And then the way that the gun draws up the ammo is magnetic. So it pulls it into a position that's automatically front, forward, backwards, lifts it up into the position, puts it into the chamber, and then launches it off when you pull the trigger by this electromagnetic push, which there's no kick. So you never fire a rifle and that never happens. You can fire off 3 shots, many shots, and you're just going to stay steady like that.
So it should be more accurate.
Way more accurate, and they don't heat up the same. So, they don't overheat the same, and you've got longer shots that you can take way more accurately. No, they're amazing. I
Do
love
you have
that
any
rodent.
problem with jamming?
Not that I ever experienced. No,
Interesting.
no, they're amazing. No, it was the most amazing fluid weapon that I've ever played with. It was fun.
Amazing. Amazing.
Plasma rifles, they're a little more, they do a little more damage. But to be honest, I don't think their effective range is as long. They really are, sort of effective at shorter ranges. You start to miss things at larger distances. It's harder to kind of hit. It's harder to, when that hot plasma ball comes out, it's just not shooting as straight as a bullet does.
You think it would dissipate over distance somewhat?
What it really starts to do is waver. It starts to be affected by air currents more than a tiny projectile does. So it starts to kind of spin like a baseball. And so it can once it gets about 50 yards out, it starts to curve, it starts to spin, and they get really inaccurate at long ranges. But at a short range, I mean, you'll burn a hole right through someone with one. They're just crazy hot.
So Randy, were the insectoids on Mars, were they indigenous or were they an invading force?
They were indigenous. They were an indigenous species.
And why were we fighting them, or why are we presumably fighting them?
We were always told that it was to protect the territory at the edge of the perimeter that we had established, from which our backline was the colonies, and we were supposed to be protecting the colonies. To be perfectly honest, I learned much later in my career that it was really just to test military equipment. So our primary reason for staying in conflict with these species wasn't really because we didn't get along. It wasn't really because we were in these horribly vicious territorial disputes. It was because we had a lot of weapons equipment to test, and it was the perfect testing ground.
So really, at the end of the day, the insectoids are sort of like guinea pigs for target practice and the working out of our military apparatus.
Yep, affirmative.
Boy, that's a horrific thought, isn't it?
It's terrible. Look, there's just one of a list of reasons, that I have come forward. If we were to sort of talk about the things that we think are not going correctly, morally or ethically or legally with covert military space program activities, and how they should change. That's one of them. That, we need to take a little more seriously the ethical and more moral principles that we espouse to have, and not treat other living species for target practice.
And do we have to fear the insectoids invading Earth, or are they such low technology we don't have to worry about that?
Let me put it this way. That's not the right question to ask. Right question to ask, and I'll reframe it. The right question to ask would be, is there an insectoid species that could be a threat to human beings here on planet Earth? And the answer would be yes. Would the insectoid species that we dealt with on Mars, are they an imminent threat to human beings on planet Earth? No. Are they technologically capable? Yes. Are they interested in any way, shape, or form in territorial domination or planetary exploitation? No. Would there possibly be another insectoid species that might? Yes.
Because I mean, if you're an insectoid species and these humans are killing your cousins over here, you might get a little bit upset with that and want to seek some revenge or to right a wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that the seeds have been sown, and let's hope that the fruit that is born from that isn't a hostile invasion, but it could be.
And are these insectoids, are they like sentient? I know you probably didn't have a lot of contact with them, but are they sentient? Are they thinking, rational, reasoning beings like we are?
They're highly intelligent. Yeah, no, we actually interacted them for a bit, interestingly enough. We actually had an exchange program and had a treaty with them for a while. It's in the book for people who want to read more about the details of how that went down. But yeah, we actually spent some time with them. They're super intelligent. Now, they're insects. So
what do they look like, Randy?
I think they look like a tall ant. So, like a 5.5 feet tall, 6 appendages, mostly upright walking. antenna. Like, yeah, I really think more like a tall ant. I know people call them, sometimes refer to them as a mantid species. I have
Ooh.
no disagreement with that, but I don't think they look like a praying mantis. I think they look more like an ant.
Yeah. Let me share just a crazy experience. And we're talking, excuse me, we're talking with Randy Cramer, who is a veteran of the secret space program through the special branch of the United States Marine Corps. And Randy is going to be on 8 upcoming episodes of Cosmic Disclosure over on the Great Gaia Network. Our friends at Gaia put Randy and I together. And Randy, I had an experience several years ago when I was a Pentecostal evangelist. I was actually doing an exorcism, and off in the corner, I saw a being that looked very much like the being you described. He was just standing there taking notes. So I just wonder if that might have been one of them other beings that could get here, and if we need to start minding our P's and Q's on how we're treating other species out there.
Well, I mean, we have a subterranean terrestrial insectoid species that lives here on planet Earth.
Do they know what we're doing to their buddies on Mars?
Yeah, and insects are fairly unemotional and dispassionate about it.
That
And
makes sense.
if we were to have a discussion about it, they would say, that's not very good. But they wouldn't get really mad about it. They might talk about it. They might come up with reasons why they think we should do something differently about it. They'd have a very dispassionate, logical conversation about it. And so when you describe one like sitting there taking notes, that's kind of their MO. I could see one of them just being like, logging the event. Maybe he was logging the possession of, a terrestrial person by a non-human, non-physical being that, maybe it was part of his job to log that away and log what was happening, because that would be their MO as observers. The Hopi have a story in their quote unquote, mythology, which I don't think is so mythological,
Right.
about a species of, giant ant that took them down underground during a time when there was a tremendous climactic or some kind of environmental problem on the surface, and they went and lived underground with them for a while and then brought them back up when it was safe to come back up to the surface. So that by their recollection of that incident, these are a positive species that didn't want to see us get wiped out from something that was happening on the surface and decided to save some of the humans that were there. So that seemed, my experience of them is that they're pretty friendly. The terrestrial ones, they're pretty friendly. But again, you can't just say insects are good, insects are bad. Reptiles are good, reptiles are bad. Because you can't say humans are good, humans are bad. That's not the way it works. You have some good humans, some bad humans. Well, you got some good insects, some bad insects. You got some good reptiles, some bad reptiles. There's just no, black and white. This is a good species, that's a bad species. These are bad people, they're good people. They're people and they're different and they've got different motivations. And so we've got to deal with every species and every group on an individual basis, just like we do here on planet Earth. You don't go to France to do business in France and just assume, well, everyone's French here and they're just going to all be like the same person because, they're two-dimensional stereotypes of themselves. Well, they're not. Well, and neither are extraterrestrial species. Extraterrestrial species are also not two-dimensional stereotypes of themselves. They're complicated thinking beings that have complicated thoughts and agendas and might have a really complicated view on something that's not so black or white.
And how do they communicate, the insectoids, to you?
Psionically, primarily through telepathy.
So you can pick up their telepathy?
Yes.
Interesting. Do you think they know what you're thinking, or are they restricted to hearing what you speak?
Good psionic telepathic communication, you're getting more than just the directed thoughts of the person, but you're not necessarily reading someone's mind either. A mind isn't a book to flip open and read a page. It's a little more complex than that, and it's what you will perceive as in images, emotions, memories, flashes of things. So what you're picking up from someone is an overall sense that you're getting from them. But the direct communication is pretty much going to be directed by the frontal lobe. And so that's going to be the primary focus of where that communication is going to happen when you're having a psionic conversation with someone.
Fascinating. Folks, we've been talking with Randy Cramer, SSP Whistleblower. He's featured in 8 upcoming episodes of Cosmic Disclosure over on Gaia. Our partners, go to Gaia/Jeff and get yourself 2 weeks free. As we end this up, Randy, if you could address maybe 2 questions, one question for me, and then give us a final summation of your ideas, where we are, and what maybe books and stuff you might have coming out. Did you get any sense from the Insectoids of their understanding or thoughts regarding a deity?
They tended to have a spiritual belief system that was centered around their planet. The indigenous reptoids were very similar in that sense. They seem to really center their consciousness and their spiritual belief system around the consciousness of their planet. I have encountered other species who, see the divine consciousness as something that's the size of the galaxy. There are species who talk about other sources, other centers of life, or centers of spiritual consciousness in the universe. But for the most part, once you get to a certain understanding of physics, it really is just a matter of understanding which beings or consciousnesses coming from which dimensional frequencies are you dealing with. And so
interesting.
I think we can think of, we're energetically divine beings. So as we go up the scale, it is presumptive that everyone and everything is a divine energetic being at some point. And our ability to understand and comprehend where we are, and our ability to understand and comprehend our own ability to alter matter and energy, as I understand that we are able to do as quantum computers, that some species have a tremendous mastery of that. And when you have a tremendous mastery of the bending of matter and energy, that can make you appear incredibly godlike. And so there's often misinterpretations of who or what God is, or who or what a deity is, based on the scale of that difference. A being that's not very evolved experiences a being that's evolved, the ability to change matter and energy, maybe anything the size of a bread box, within this area here. Well, that's going to seem like godlike magical power to someone who doesn't have that. And so a lot of that is scale. But I think,
any residual telepathic contact still from these beings in your mind?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'm constantly, working on my psionic development. I teach a class on psionics. I teach other people how to master their psionic abilities and their human potential. I'm constantly working on my development. So, psionic telepathic messages, it's a regular thing.
And how do people that are interested in those classes and people that want to know more information about you, how do they reach out to you, Randy Cramer, veteran of the Secret Space Program?
Yeah, they can reach me via my website, which is www.earthcitizenconsulting.org. That's all one word, Earth Citizen Consulting. I will warn people, if they go to my website, it'll look like there's cobwebs everywhere and nothing's been touched for a couple of years, because my web guy and I have been talking about revamping the whole site. We've got this plan and strategy to change everything, and we just haven't done it all and updated everything. So it looks ancient and like I haven't touched my website, which is kind of true, but there is a forum. People can email me there. I do get those emails. Anyone who sends me an email with interest in wanting to take the psionics class, they will go on my mailer for sure, and they'll be notified of when those classes are coming up.
And when are your episodes on Gaia coming up on Cosmic Disclosure?
I believe, let's see, today's the 28th, maybe today. I think it was today or tomorrow or something like that. It's
well, we're honored to kind of give you a kickoff. We're glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, so it's this week, definitely. Could be any time, and then it's supposed to be one episode every week after that, I think, if I understand correctly. So
excellent. Well, we're looking forward to seeing Randy on Cosmic Disclosure on Gaia. And Randy, with about a minute left, what's what kind of a message do you think you'd like to deliver to the folks that listen from all of your wealth of experience, and certainly experience that not many of us will ever share?
Know that what you think, what you feel, and what you believe is constantly affecting the matter and energy within your body and within the reality around you. So if you want to change the way that your world is, start with yourself. Start with your thoughts, your feelings, and your belief systems and your attitudes, because that can change your physical body, your cellular structure, your genetics, your DNA, and the matter and energy around you. So start there. Start with changing your attitudes, your beliefs, your feelings, and your thoughts, because those are the things that are dictating your reality.
Thank you, Randy. Please sit there just for 1 second so I can say goodbye to you personally. It's been my pleasure to interview today Captain Randy Cramer, Secret Space Program Whistleblower, and he has 8 episodes coming up on the Great Gaia program, Cosmic Disclosure. Thank you for being polite in the chat room today. Randy, thank you for sharing so much of your time and your story with us. We look forward to watching you on Gaia. Go to gaia.com/Jeff, get your 2-week a free trial and at least see a couple of episodes, and I'm sure you'll want to watch the rest of them. Randy, I salute you for your service to humanity and to our country. We thank you so much for being here with us, and it's been an honor and a privilege to be with you, my friend.
My pleasure, Jeff. Thank you very much for having me.
And hopefully we can talk to you again sometime. We'll be looking for your episodes on Gaia.
Absolutely.
Take care now.